you guys were not. You were in. Actually, you were in our preseason.
I was in Portland as well.
I want to cover playoff hockey in Vancouver. I want the fans to enjoy and experience playoff hockey in Vancouver. I want the Canucks to win a Stanley Cup for this city. And looking at Raptors Twitter right now, a fade for Cade. I feel like a lot of them would love to see him there. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I mean, I know that's big on Raptors Twitter minds these days.
LA gave one out to Jared Goff, and they've already moved on.
Correct.
They didn't think that could work for them.
Okay, sports fans, it's time for the Unnamed Sports Show. Here's your host, Joshua Griffith.
This is the Unnamed Sports Show. That's right, as Don Andrews so graciously announced, I am Joshua Griffith, your host, of course, here on the Sports Talkline Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. You can tell I'm a little bit excited today, but that is because it is episode 58 of the Unnamed Sports Show, and we're going to be talking Vancouver Whitecaps getting back into action this Saturday night. And who else better to join me to talk about it than TSN color commentator of the Vancouver Whitecaps, former Canadian men's national team keeper, and former Vancouver 86er, the one and only Paul Dolan. So today on this show, Paul and I will be talking about the Euro 2020 final, the whole tournament, of course, Messi re-signing in Barcelona, the Vancouver Whitecaps, and what is going on with head coach Marc Santos. Going to ask Paul also about his time with the Canadian men's national team. He's got some stories for me, so I'm really excited for that. But of course, if you know the routine by now, then we need to take care of some housekeeping. So that's right. Give this video a like down at the bottom. Make sure to comment along with all of your thoughts on the Euros, Messi, and all things Whitecaps as we go along and have our conversation. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Talkline YouTube channel. Also, you can throw me a follow at Twitter at Joshua Griffith 0, and that's the number 0. So without further ado, let's get right into this chat with the great Dolie the Goalie, Paul Dolan. All right, so I'm joined now on the Unnamed Sports Show by a member of the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame, former Canadian men's national team keeper, former 86ers, again, you can go on, and now commentator for TSN, giving us the voice of the Vancouver Whitecaps, the one and only Paul Dolan. Paul, thanks so much for joining me and chatting today.
Yeah, happy to do it, Joshua.
Yeah, are you staying healthy and safe during these times? Obviously, we're getting back to normal, but still like to check in with my guests.
Yeah, and I'm lucky that I worked from home before the pandemic, and so things didn't change too much, but back up and running now. It's good that sports are running. I work with Adidas, so we need people to be playing sports equipment and uniforms too. So I'm happy to see that, and that people seem to be safe and healthy, and that the province is doing quite well now.
It's really nice to see when you drive past fields and there's kids playing and people playing sports again. And things are starting to get back to normal. So obviously we have so much to go over today, and there's not as much time as I'd like with you because you're a busy man, but pretty fresh here still with the finals being on Sunday. What did you think of the England versus Italy match? And what did you make of the Euros 2020 tournament in general?
I love the tournament. I wonder too if it was something that we all needed. We had the opportunity to watch professional soccer, obviously over the course of the last little while in league play and even the Champions League last year, and watching Alfonso win the Champions League with Bayern Munich. And then this year, of course, too, we got to see that final with some fans in the stands. But to see a full-fledged tournament that we all want to see every 2 years, and to have it delayed, I think there was some pent-up, demand, if you want to call it, and excitement for people wanting to see what a tournament it was too. The goals were flying. There were surprises. There were some incredible knockout stage games. And then the final itself, as much as it might have not been the most free-flowing, fantastic soccer game to watch, the drama around it and the two teams and their histories and everything it meant to England coming home and then not coming home, coming to Rome. It was sensational. You know, I think the only thing that's a little bit of a sore spot is kind of the residual reaction after the players missed the penalty kicks. You hate to see that. And, you know, obviously it happened to some degree with Gareth Southgate when he missed the penalties back in 1996. I was actually at that Euro semi-final between Germany and England at the old Wembley. And, you know, what's happened now too is obviously a big stain, unfortunately, for the three young players that missed the penalty kick. So that's a downside. But let's say overall the tournament itself, I think a lot of people were excited to get big stage soccer back on track. And then you've got a year and a half now, a short time frame until the World Cup. So I think the focus on international soccer is certainly stronger than it's been in the last 3 years.
Yes, that's going to be a very quick turnaround to Qatar in 2022. And like you said, you know, that was disappointing to see for the, you know, the three English players that missed the penalty kicks. But one of the things that, you know, I will take a positive from was all of the support that they ended up getting just from the rest of their team, from so much of the football world.
Yeah, I love to see that too. The mural of Marcus Rashford.
Yes.
And then what I saw yesterday with the fan support and what a remarkable young man he is as well. And we shouldn't spend too much time, despite how important it is to discuss it. We shouldn't spend too much time on the small minority of people who have these issues because they're issues. But I love to see what we saw with regard to the support. And, you know, I think at some point too, what we'll see is that those players come back stronger from that too, as Gareth Southgate did himself when he missed the penalty kick and came back to manage the team and take him to the finals. Those players have remarkable futures in front of them as well. All three terrific young players. And you have to think for England's sake too, that with all that young quality, that they're a team on the up and up. And I wonder, you know, with that older defense, mind you, the young keeper who wins player of the tournament has done so well. Spinazzola, another young player. Players that I didn't know a lot about. You know, I watched the highlights of Serie A, but and obviously some of the games play, whether it's the Champions League or the international matches as we did with the tournament. But to see some players come through, it's a bit of a revelation. That's what I really enjoy about these international tournaments.
Yeah, it was a great tournament. I quite enjoyed it. It was a lot of football, and I'm kind of sad actually not waking up, you know, at 6 a.m. with there being games on throughout the morning to watch. But let's keep things overseas, as it seems Wednesday morning reports of Lionel Messi re-signing with Barcelona, 5-year deal, took a little bit of a pay cut. Was there any doubts in your mind that he was going to go back to those Spanish giants?
Yeah, I'm not surprised he's gone back, and I'm certainly not surprised that he's taken a pay cut, only in that his pay cut is than anybody else in the world is making, maybe barring Ronaldo, but he's got all the money in the world in the bank, and there's only so much the club can actually pay without going broke themselves. So the only reason I'm a little surprised is because it looked like about a year ago or 6 or 8 months ago that there was no chance he was going to go back to Barcelona, and that he was having a look globally. And we all have heard either rumors or suggestions or feel that at some point, someplace in Major League Soccer might be his final landing spot. But it looks like it's a 5-year deal for Messi there. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean he's tied there for life, but they'll have his rights for that length of time. And I like to see it because I personally like seeing players play stem to stern in one uniform in terms of club play. And I think, you know, we all recognize Lionel Messi. I do anyway. I think he's the best player in the world. And certainly in the top two, that's globally, everyone agrees to that for sure. But to see him back in a Barcelona uniform, obviously it's great for Spanish fans and Barcelona fans in particular.
Oh, he is, like you said, number two. If you don't have him number one, he's number two. So he's number two for me because I'm a Ronaldo fan. So
Okay.
he's but just slightly down because he's got that international trophy to his belt. So there's not much that us Ronaldo fans can really say that Ronaldo's done better this time. I'm with Paul Dolan of TSN here. Let's move on to some local stuff now and talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps, a team that you're the color commentator for, obviously with Blake Price of the Scares and Price Show and TSN there. 9 points, the bottom of the Western Conference. I asked Marc Santos after Wednesday's game, the blowout loss against Real Salt Lake, if he thinks he's the right coach for the job. He said yes. I'm happy with that because I'm probably in the minority thinking that he is the right person for the job. What do you think on this? Are you with me? Are you kind of on the opposite side? Because there's a very vocal, almost majority that maybe think it's time for the Whitecaps to look somewhere else.
Well, my answer to that is that I still think it's far too early to judge, and people will say it's 2.5 years. And I don't like to build excuses. And Marc's quite good, I think, about not doing the same thing. And managers like Chris Armas at Toronto have been let go for less. But again, completely different situations, in my opinion. Toronto FC was a Supporters Shield contender last year, playing away from home. They make the switch and start off in the basement of the league after, if you want to say a fair sample size, enough games that I think gave the indication to management that maybe this coach isn't the right guy for the job. I think I really enjoy my interactions with Marc. Every time I speak with him, I take away something that I see he is trying to implement or build within the squad. Has it come to fruition? Absolutely not. It has not, and he'll be the first to admit that. Why hasn't it come to fruition yet? And this is where I have to start building a case for year one is a complete transition of players. And you say, well, maybe he is responsible for that, and he is, but you have to start somewhere. And then years 2 and 2.5 now, away from home in the pandemic, not in front of fans, with some of these other issues like the Aliyat Nan one and whatnot, and not having the number 10 player. Now, do a lot of other teams around the league not have the ideal attacking midfield designated player? True. Do other teams have injury issues or players going away on international duty? Absolutely, they do. And the two other Canadian teams, Toronto and Montreal, they're also playing away from home. But I think to give the proper judgment, you need to see some normalcy. And getting back to Vancouver and a run with these players in place, what's the rush in changing things? What does it gain?
Yeah.
Who have you got lined up to replace him if that is what you firmly believe? I will agree that what we've seen hasn't been good enough. But so will Marc himself. Is he the guy that can change the fortunes of the team? That my answer there is we don't know until we see a little bit more time. And I'm more than willing to give that time from my own personal perspective. I think the Whitecaps management is also willing to give him more time because of the reasons I've outlined there. So that's where I stand on that one.
Paul, and you bring up some good points, and you mentioned management too there. The Whitecaps had a change in management as well. So it's the first season Marc Santos goes in, and it's a complete overhaul of the squad. And then it's a complete overhaul of the coaching staff, of the front office staff, and bringing in Axel Schuster and bringing in Mark Panis, and then letting go Mark Panis, and then bringing in the scouting department, bringing in another coach and Ricardo Clark. There's been so many moving pieces, and it would be really nice to see what these Whitecaps could do with everything in place at home under their circumstances. Because, something I wanted to get into a little bit later, but I don't think people understand how big of an advantage home field is with your fans.
No, you're right. And not to spin it into the negative, but it can almost be more of a disadvantage for the visiting team. So teams are not having to travel into Vancouver to play on turf in an unfamiliar setting. And yes, the Whitecap fans are very good fans. My hope is that the majority of them will continue to back the team when they come back here, because they've had a tough last 1.5 years without fans and not the best of results. And sometimes that means that the support tends to go that way as well. But my hope is that people realize the difficulties that these players have gone through, the sacrifices they've made, and that when I watch a Whitecap team, I never see a team that is there not trying, not giving absolutely everything they've got. And I think just with those players coming back home, having the support of the fans and the teams that they're playing against having to travel into Canada on the turf, and some of the difficulties it is to get into Canada to do that for those teams, means that now they do have the advantages that most every other home team has, and we just have not been able to see that.
It would be nice to see, and hopefully we get to see it soon with the Whitecaps. I guess aiming for August. They have 4 matches here in the next 2 weeks. How difficult is this little stretch is going to be for them? Do you think this is going to kind of make or break their season, or like again what you're saying that we're going to just have to wait and see until they're home and stable?
Yeah, but you're right that make or break, because if they get too far behind, it's going to be tough to get into the playoff picture. But when you look at the West right now, they're still within reaching distance, and you know what MLS was like. You get on a few games, and maybe that spur of coming home gives them that bump. Because it is true that for the majority of the games, except for the last Salt Lake game and the Kansas City one earlier, they've been right there in every game.
Every single one.
Again, I'm not trying to be a shill for the Whitecap team. As much as the dropping points in Seattle and Dallas were disappointing, you've gained a point in Seattle and Dallas, two of the toughest places to play in MLS. So I'm not trying to spin it and polish something that isn't strong, but I think you have to look at that as small building blocks that, with a bit of luck here and there, with a bit of fortitude, with that one extra player, I just think that they're not that far from turning the corner.
And you mentioned luck, and JJ Adams, the province, I think, asked Maxime Crepeau if there's a stat that they're using for the bad luck the team has, because I seem to be a common thread during games on my Twitter is, okay, well, the Whitecaps have had 20 black cats walk behind their back. They walked through some ladders and then smashed 30 mirrors, because there's, and you would know more than me, Paul. I mean, being as a soccer player, like, there is that element of luck, and they seem to be on the negative side of it so much this year.
I think it's true too, though, Joshua, that you do create your own luck. A good example is winning penalty kicks. That's never a handball, that's never a foul, or whatever it is. Raheem Sterling goes into the box. In my opinion, that's never a foul. But the fact is, Raheem Sterling drove into the penalty area, went by players, and created that good luck by being in that attacking position. So the Whitecaps will get better luck. They'll get own goals or whatever it is, and they force the issue more. So that's down to them. And I strongly believe that. And I don't think that if you look at the Whitecaps record, you can say the reason they're at the foot of the West is because of bad luck. That's not the reason. The reason is they haven't been good enough in games. They haven't either closed out games late, or they haven't started games well enough to put themselves into a good position and dictate the rhythm or tempo of the game. So the reason they are where they are is because they haven't been good enough, and everybody knows that. I just think that we need to give them a little bit more time to turn the corner with some of these things that will help their cause over the course of time.
Yeah, and that's true about the luck factor. I mean, you're kind of creating things. When you look at it, giving up a throw deep in your own end, well, there's opportunity for the luck to go against you. So if you maybe were able to clear it and only gave up a throw halfway at the halfway line, you wouldn't get a long throw in. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that, Paul. That's a great point. And the Whitecaps need to kind of make a little bit better of their opportunities. So Paul, I mean, I know that you're a busy guy. You got some stuff to do today, but I do want to get into with your time for the Canadian men's national team, some of your time maybe with in the USL days with the Vancouver 86ers, if that's okay.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I love talking the old days. It's all I've got.
Oh, fantastic. I wouldn't say that. I mean, but Paul, there's illustrious career. You're one of the very few Canadian national team players that can bolster, a World Cup status, some great games. Of course, the famous one of holding France to the 1-0 or to 0-0 until so late in the match there. I was just wondering if you could tell me some of your favorite moments during your time with the Canadian men's national team.
That was it for sure.
Yeah.
In the World Cup, because it doesn't get bigger than that. No matter what you say, from an international level, that is the ultimate goal. Obviously, the one step further is to win a game, and then another to get out of the group, and then to win the World Cup. But that's not something that at any point we've ever felt was realistic. I will say one thing about the current crop of Canadian team players, not to get too far ahead of us, is that I really feel like this is a team that can qualify on its own for a World Cup, not just in 2026 when we're hosting it. When they get in there, can actually, maybe get out of the group, maybe win a game. And that's something that we've never really been able to say before. And in 1986, we were in an extremely tough group. We were in a group that had the reigning European champions in France, and we had the USSR that went on to the Euro final 2 years later, and had, I think, the best goalie in the world at the time in Renat Basayev, and a Hungary team that was very strong at that time as well. So it was never going to be a case where we felt we were the favorites to get out of the group. We just wanted to put on a good show, and that's why that moment stands out so much for me, is because not only did we hold France to just the one goal, but there were portions of the game where we played extremely well, particularly in the beginning when we had a couple of chances, and I think kind of set the French back. But to look across at them in the lineup in that small tunnel leading out onto the field in Lyon, and see the European champions and know players by name and face, because back then we didn't have 24/7 soccer on TV like you have access to now. You were lucky to have even seen the European Championship. But we all knew Michel Platini and Tigana, Hernandez, all the rest of that team there. Joel Batz, who, funny enough, was the goalkeeper for France. It ended up being the goalkeeper coach for the Montreal Impact a couple of years ago with Remy Gard. So anyway, that was a tremendous moment, and all the moments that I spent with the Canadian team. As much as that was the highlight, every game I ever played for Canada, every camp I was ever in, all the players had the same end goal. It was a great group of players with excellent attitudes and complete commitment to the jersey. There were times when we were just a bit unfortunate that we weren't able to get to that next step again. After 86, I felt like we all thought that would happen again more regularly, but as we know, it's been since then, since we've qualified, and here's fingers crossed that can happen again soon.
Yes, we fingers crossed that we're not waiting till 2026 and Canada can do something in this hex and make it in the in the top 3 or 4 there, and hopefully like you said, maybe we win a game in the World Cup stage. But so we have the positives. Love when I talk to Canadian Canadian men's national team players, and always get a good and a bad story, because some of these places that you've had to play, Marcel Lejeune, he once mentioned that one of the strangest things he had was somebody threw a shoe at him, not in both shoes, just one shoe. So he was kind of curious. He's like, what did they do with the other shoe? Did they just bring it in with them? Here's a story about coins being thrown, bags of urine, obviously. What's maybe one of the wildest moments that you ever occurred during your international time playing?
Until you've been to Central America and seen what it's like, and we were lucky, I think, although we got pumped by Honduras 8-1 when I went coach as a goalkeeper coach with Stephen Hart a number of years ago, the infamous game. You just cannot understand the passion of the fans until you go down there. When I say we were lucky, we had Arash Madani from Sportsnet, Kurt Larson from the Toronto Sun. It felt like it was the first time really we had media travel down to see those conditions. I mean, it's happened before, obviously, but all the stories that ever came back from CONCACAF were from the players themselves, rather than those who could attest to what the players are going through. And as much as I, at the time, thought, this is revolting, you're having stuff thrown at you, because as Marcel says, in every single stadium that we went into. It was one projectile or another. It was limes in Costa Rica in 1985. It was the bags of urine in El Salvador that you mentioned. It was the seats, the hay-covered seats that were flying down in Guatemala. No one spared. Mexico is the same. Honduras, the last time we were there, was full-on liters of bottles of water coming down, and you've got the police using their shields to protect you as you walk off the field. Every single one of those is a fact. Those aren't made up stories. And that's not to trash the fans in those places. As I look back on it, it's actually, I never condone throwing things at people, but I love that passion. And when we went out onto the field in the most recent game against Honduras, and it's a 1 o'clock kickoff on a Tuesday, which just shows you that everything is geared around what can we do to give you the advantage to qualify. They made it a day off for fans. The place is packed hours before the match. The vuvuzelas, the noise, the crowd noise, I couldn't speak to Ante Jazic 2 feet away, and I've got video of it, without hearing the noise 2 hours before the game. How does that not give you a rush? But at the same time, if things don't go right for you, as it didn't in that 8-1 game when we hit the post early and then they came back and scored, and then we had another one that was close and they came back and scored. And it goes from a situation where you can take the crowd out and have them turn on their own team to they're just so buoyed by the home support that you've got no chance of recovery. That's the margins of international soccer in places where the passion is just as incredible as it is there.
Well, I mean, John Horgan released some good news the other day, so hopefully fans in Vancouver can get to experience some of those world-class stage tournaments and maybe rival and give some of the fans, but without throwing things, of course. Fans don't do that, but maybe give them kind of a rival experience if 2026 ends up being in Vancouver.
Would not be something, and I'm glad to see that there is still hope.
Yeah.
Something that I was really disappointed that Vancouver and BC, I guess, that Vancouver would not be considered. And now with what's happened with Montreal, to me, it's a no-brainer. Of course, you don't want to write an open check to FIFA to let them have carte blanche to do whatever they want to do. That needs to be negotiated. But I think what can happen for this city, the benefits to the city, not just for those 3 games or whatever it ends up being. I've heard some people say, yeah, well, you're going to get, number 80 against number 120 in the world because so many teams qualifying. But the fact is, you would likely get a Canada game. You're always going to get one quality team. And it's the World Cup. It's not necessarily about even those 90 minutes. It's about the buildup. It's about the event itself. It's about being part of history. And we all saw what we experienced during the Olympics. Of course, Vancouver was the host city that time for all the events, but the World Cup is just another level. And to have eyes of the world on Vancouver, especially as John Horgan mentioned, which I'm glad he did, to help the tourism sector.
Yeah.
When they need that, I really do think it's a win-win. And you do the right things. I think FIFA is in a position, especially with Vic Montagliani. I mean, we've got a Burnaby boy as the FIFA vice president. Not to say that he can or cannot sway what happens in a particular city, but I think the right things will happen here. We saw it with the Women's World Cup, the value that it added to this province and city, and I hope the right thing happens there.
Me too, because I mean, you saw Commercial Drive in Vancouver after Italy won. And wouldn't it be nice to have little sections everywhere in Vancouver of different fans and the pubs and the tourism sections really, benefiting from it? I'd love to see it, and hopefully it goes ahead. So, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, I know like you said, you got some stuff to do today. So really enjoyed chatting with you about all things, Euros, the Vancouver Whitecaps, and, your time with Canada Soccer.
Great to speak with you, Joshua. Keep up the good work. I'm listening on all the Whitecap media interviews, and you're doing a great job there.
Well, thank you. I look forward to your call against LA on Saturday.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
Yes, Whitecaps. What is going to happen with the team right now? Are they close to returning home? So many questions still to answer. I want to thank my guest, Paul Dolan, so much for joining me today. I apologize if there was a bit of noise in the background as we had to deal with some construction outside. So apologize for that. But of course, everyone knows in these Zoom days, we have to deal with what we get. Staying on the Whitecaps front for a little bit, we had some news after Marc Santos spoke to the media on Wednesday. News from Toronto FC and Club de Football Montreal as well. But let's get first to the Marc Santos news and his media availability. Like I said, he spoke to the media on Wednesday. Was very candid, gave us about 25 minutes of his time. Lots of talk on players' availability. It looks like the only person who's out still is Bruno Gaspar, nursing an injury. He mentioned 2 other players who could still be a little bit ways away from actual action on Saturday. Obviously, Michael Baldissimo. You would think that he might be one of the players, and maybe Tosin Ricketts, but that's all speculation on my part. There was also some talk from him about adding players, and our journalist, the Great, asked him about maybe some additions to the Whitecaps this season. So, he mentioned, yes, they are very close to having one player signed, locked up. He's pretty sure that it's all ready to go. And he said that if it falls through, he would be very surprised. So Har was, of course, gracious enough to make a little gold joke. And I'm sure Whitecaps fans will know what that alludes to. So hopefully that is some news we'll hear from the Whitecaps in the next couple of days or during this transfer window. So staying on the Whitecaps and MLS, of course, is the news out of Eastern Canada is that Toronto FC and Club de Football Montreal will be returning this weekend to host matches against American teams. So that is great news for Canadian soccer fans and for the Whitecaps fans. We're obviously going to have to wait a bit for the Whitecaps to make an announcement. It looks like it's going to be the end of July at least. A little bit of rumors, and I say rumors, circulating that they could return home against Austin FC on July 28th. And if not, a little bit later on in August. So my birthday's in August on the 13th. Couldn't imagine a better birthday present for myself than getting to be back in the stadium covering live Whitecaps games for everyone. If we get any more information here at Sports Talkline, we're going to let you know. So obviously make sure, like I said, to follow me on Twitter. So you're going to get all that information right away when it comes out. And then on Sports Talkline and on Sports Talkline, you're going to find all the other sports. So if you're a sports fan, this is the website for you. We just had the Major League Baseball All-Star game. We had the NBA Finals Game 4 last night against the Milwaukee Bucks and Phoenix Suns. So make sure to check all those highlights out on Sports Talkline. And that pretty much wraps up episode 58 of the Unnamed Sports Show. I hope that everyone really enjoyed my chat with Paul Dolan, and make sure to stay tuned for next week's episode and a really packed August, as I have a ton of amazing guests. If you already haven't liked and subscribed, do that down at the bottom right now. And again, leave me a comment. What did you think of the show and the interview with Paul? So again, for the Sports Talkline Network, I have been your host, Joshua Griffith. Remember to love sports, all sports.